My grandmother's full name was Eleanor Margaret Whitmore, and she was 82 years old the night she called us all to Christmas dinner and said, "Before I die, this family will finally know the truth." I'm Claire Elizabeth Whitmore, 32, and until that moment, I believed Christmas dinners were only dangerous in the way bad wine and unresolved tension always are. I didn't know that sentence, spoken calmly, almost tenderly, would split my family open like a hidden fracture finally giving way. We were seated around the long oak dining table in my grandparents' old house, the one that smelled like pine cleaner and burnt sugar every December, the same house where I'd learned, slowly and painfully, how to stay quiet, the same house where people smiled wide for photos and swallowed secrets whole. Grandma Eleanor didn't raise her voice. She didn't slam her fork down or demand attention. She simply set her napkin aside, folded her hands, and looked directly at my mother. That's when my chest tightened. Because in my family, when someone looked directly at my mother like that, it meant war. Before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you what she said or what my mother did, I need to ask you something. If you've ever felt like the truth in your family had an expiration date, like it was being deliberately delayed until it no longer mattered, you'll understand why I'm telling this story. And if stories like this resonate with you, go ahead and subscribe, because what I learned that night changed how I see family forever. Grandma's eyes flicked around the table, landing on each of us like she was taking attendance for the last time. My Uncle James shifted uncomfortably. My Aunt Denise stopped chewing. My cousin Lily lowered her phone. And my mother, Margaret Whitmore, perfectly coiffed, perfectly controlled, forced a smile that never reached her eyes. I remember thinking, this isn't about me. I was wrong. The moment stretched too long. The ham cooled, the candles flickered. Then Grandma spoke again. "Some of you have spent decades pretending certain things never happened," she said. "Some of you built your lives on that pretending." My mother laughed softly. "Mom, it's Christmas." "I know. That's why I chose tonight." Something inside me stirred, a memory half buried, a feeling I'd learned to ignore. Growing up, I was the quiet one, not the favorite, not the problem child either, just the one who existed on the edges. My older brother, Daniel, was the pride of the family, star athlete, straight A's, golden boy. My mother orbited him like a devoted planet. Everything he did was impressive. Everything I did was fine. "Claire's always been sensitive," my mother used to say whenever I cried, or questioned, or remembered things differently than she did. Sensitive. That word became a cage. When I was 8, I stopped talking about what happened in this house. When I was 12, I stopped expecting fairness. By 16, I understood the unspoken rule. Don't disturb the peace, even if the peace is built on a lie. So when Grandma said the truth, my first instinct wasn't curiosity. It was fear. My mother leaned toward her. "Eleanor, you're tired. Let's not do this." Grandma smiled sadly. "You said that when Claire was a child, too." The room went silent. I felt heat rush to my face. My name didn't come up often in serious conversations. I was background noise, decoration. "What do you mean?" my mother asked, sharply now. Grandma turned to me and said, "Claire, sweetheart, do you remember the winter you stopped sleeping?" My heart slammed. I did remember. I remembered staring at my ceiling every night, counting cracks, afraid to close my eyes. I remembered begging to stay home from school because my stomach hurt. I remembered my mother telling me I was dramatic, that I wanted attention, that nothing was wrong. I opened my mouth. No sound came out. "That was years ago," my mother snapped. "She was a nervous child." "She was a scared child," Grandma corrected, "and you knew why." My uncle cleared his throat. "Mom." "No," Grandma said, louder now. "I won't be interrupted tonight." My hands were shaking under the table. I pressed my fingernails into my palm, grounding myself, the way my therapist taught me years later. Back then, I didn't have the language for this feeling. I just knew something heavy was pressing against my chest, demanding air. Grandma looked at me again, and her eyes filled with something I'd never seen before: regret. She said, "I made a promise to myself that before I leave this world, I would stop protecting the wrong people." My mother stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor. "This is inappropriate." "No," Grandma said. "What was inappropriate happened 30 years ago." 30 years. The number echoed in my head. I was 32. Whatever she was talking about had been buried almost as long as I'd been alive. I felt suddenly dizzy. "Sit down, Margaret. You had your turn to control the story." My mother's face hardened. The mask slipped just enough for me to glimpse something cold underneath. Not fear, anger. That's when I knew whatever Grandma was about to say wasn't going to expose a stranger. It was going to expose her. I looked around the table, searching for reassurance, for someone to tell me this was all a misunderstanding. My husband wasn't there. We'd argued earlier, another quiet distance I hadn't addressed yet. I was alone, surrounded by people who shared my blood, but not my truth. Grandma reached into her cardigan pocket and pulled out a folded envelope, yellowed at the edges. "I kept this," she said, "even when you begged me to destroy it." My mother's voice cracked. "Mom, don't." That's the first time I'd ever heard her sound afraid. Grandma placed the envelope on the table, right in front of me. "Claire, sweetheart, this belongs to you." I stared at it, my name written in Grandma's shaky handwriting. My heart pounded so loudly I was sure everyone could hear it. "What is it?" I whispered. Grandma met my eyes. "The truth." My mother lunged forward. "You have no idea what you're doing." "Oh, I do, and so will she." My hands hovered under the envelope, trembling, and just before I touched it, Grandma said the words that would change how I understood my entire childhood. "The night you stopped sleeping was the night we all chose silence over you." And that's when I knew whatever was inside that envelope wasn't just the truth. It was a betrayal my family had been hiding in plain sight. I didn't open the envelope right away. Not because I wasn't curious, but because some instincts are older than logic. Every cell in my body was screaming that once I unfolded that paper, there would be no going back to the version of my family I'd spent decades surviving inside. My mother noticed the hesitation. She straightened, smoothing her blouse like she was preparing for a presentation instead of a reckoning. "Claire," she said, her voice shifting into the familiar tone she used when she wanted compliance, "you don't need to read that. It's old. It's been exaggerated. Your grandmother has been emotional lately." Emotional. The word hit me harder than I expected. It was the same word she used when I cried as a child, when I asked questions that made her uncomfortable, when I remembered things she preferred erased. I looked at Grandma Eleanor. Her shoulders were slumped now, like the strength she'd summoned to start this confession was already draining. "Is it true?" I asked her quietly. "Whatever is in here, did it really happen?" She nodded once, slowly, firmly. "Yes." That was all she said. Something shifted inside me then. Not fear, not even anger, but resolve, the kind that comes after years of swallowing doubt. I slid my finger under the flap and pulled the paper out. It wasn't just one page, it was several. Old documents, a letter, a photocopy of something official. The first line made my vision blur. "Incident report." My breath caught. My Uncle James swore under his breath. Aunt Denise covered her mouth. My cousin Lily stared openly now, her phone forgotten. My mother took a step back. I scanned the page, my hands growing colder with every word. Dates, addresses, my grandparents' house, my name. 8 years old. I remembered the winter Grandma mentioned. I remembered being told to stay upstairs while adults talked in hushed voices. I remembered my mother holding my shoulders too tightly afterward, telling me never to repeat stories that could ruin lives. I had believed her. "What is this?" I asked, though I already knew. Grandma's voice was barely audible. "A report," I filed, and then withdrew. My head snapped up. "You withdrew it?" Tears slid down her cheeks. "They told me it would destroy the family, that you'd be labeled, that no one would ever look at you the same." My mother seized on that. "Exactly, she did what was best." I laughed. It came out sharp, almost hysterical. "For who?" No one answered. I kept reading. The words swam, but the meaning was clear enough. An incident involving a family friend, someone trusted, someone who'd been around often enough that my presence alone hadn't raised alarms, someone whose name had been crossed out. My stomach turned. "Why is the name redacted?" Grandma looked at my mother. "Tell her." My mother shook her head. "No." The room felt smaller, the walls pressing in. "Tell me," I said, my voice rising. Silence. Then my Uncle James spoke, reluctantly. "It was complicated." I stared at him. "Say the name." He didn't. My mother exploded then. "This is enough. You are not dragging this through the mud. It was handled." "Handled?" I snapped. "I was 8. Her face hardened. "And fragile. You misinterpreted things." There it was, the gaslighting I'd grown up breathing like air. I looked back at the paper. Another line jumped out, one I hadn't noticed before. Recommendation: temporary separation from primary caregiver pending investigation. My heart pounded. "Primary caregiver?" I whispered. Grandma closed her eyes. "Your mother." The room erupted. "That's not true," my mother shouted. "They overreacted." "They thought you failed to protect her, and you know why." My mother's control slipped completely. "I did protect her. I protected this family." At my expense. The realization settled heavy and undeniable. Every dismissal, every minimization, every time I'd been told to get over it, it hadn't been ignorance. It had been strategy. I folded the papers carefully, my hands steadier than my heart. "I knew," you said to my mother, "you knew something happened." She crossed her arms. "I knew you were confused." "I knew I wasn't safe," I said, "and you chose silence." She looked at me then, not with guilt, not with remorse, but with calculation. "What would you have had me do? Destroy everyone over something that couldn't even be proven?" The words sliced clean through me. Grandma sobbed openly now. "I should have fought harder." I stood up. My legs felt weak, but holding still felt worse. "Who was it?" My mother didn't answer. My Uncle James shifted. "Claire?" I asked a question. He swallowed. "It was my brother-in-law." The room went still. Not a family friend. Family. I felt like I was falling backward into my own body. Memories rearranged themselves with brutal clarity. Who was always around? Who hugged too long? Who my mother insisted I sit beside because he's harmless? My vision narrowed. "You let him stay?" Her jaw tightened. "He apologized." That was it. That was the moment something in me broke cleanly in half. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the envelope, and tucked them under my arm like something sacred and dangerous. I spent my entire childhood thinking I was broken. I built my life around that belief, and all of you knew. No one contradicted me. Grandma reached for my hand. I let her hold it, for now. "I didn't protect you," she whispered, "but I won't protect them anymore." My mother scoffed. "You think this changes anything? It's Christmas. Tomorrow this will be forgotten." I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something unexpected. Clarity. "No," I said. "Tomorrow I'm done forgetting." I turned toward the door, my heart pounding, my entire understanding of family in ruins behind me. "Claire," Grandma called. I paused. "There's more," she said. "The reason I stayed silent for so long." I turned back slowly. "What reason?" She looked past me, to my mother. Because she wasn't the only one who knew. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? I asked. Grandma inhaled shakily. Your father knew too. My father. The word landed like a blunt object to the chest. For a moment, I genuinely thought I'd misheard her, like my brain had rejected the sentence before it could fully form. Fathers were supposed to be the line between danger and home, even absent ones, even flawed ones, not complicit ones. What? I said. Grandma Eleanor's lips trembled. She looked older in that moment than I had ever seen her. Smaller, like the weight she'd been carrying finally exceeded the strength of her bones. She knew, she repeated. Not at first, but later, when the report came, when the questions were asked. My ears rang. I shook my head, a reflexive denial. No, my dad wouldn't. He left because of work, because you and Mom, because your mother gave him a choice, Grandma said softly. Silence or divorce with nothing. The room blurred around the edges. I reached for the back of a chair to steady myself. My parents' divorce had always been presented as clean, mutual, quiet. I was 10, old enough to understand words, young enough to believe them. He abandoned us, my mother snapped. Don't rewrite history. Grandma's gaze hardened. You rewrote it first. My Uncle James looked like he might be sick. Margaret, you told us he didn't want children. That's what she needed you to believe, Grandma replied. I stared at my mother. Is this true? She looked away. That was answer enough. Memories began reassembling themselves like shards pulled toward a magnet. My father standing awkwardly at school events, his forced smiles, the way my mother always stayed within earshot, the sudden move out of state, the rare phone calls that slowly stopped. I had blamed him. All these years, I had blamed him. He tried to fight at first. He wanted to push the investigation forward. And you stopped him? I asked. No, she said. Your mother did. My mother laughed bitterly. He was weak. I turned fully toward her now, my heart pounding with something close to rage. You threatened him. I protected my family. You protected yourself, I said. Her eyes flashed. You have no idea what I sacrificed. The irony nearly knocked the breath out of me. I grabbed my coat from the back of the chair. I needed air, space, distance from the walls that had watched me unravel quietly as a child. I'm leaving, I said. Grandma stood. Claire. I need to think, I replied. I need to breathe. My mother didn't stop me. She didn't follow. She didn't apologize. That hurt more than anything else. The night air slapped my face as I stepped outside. Christmas lights glowed in neighboring windows, soft and cheerful and obscene in their normalcy. Somewhere down the street, someone laughed. I walked without direction, my boots crunching on frozen gravel, my breath coming out in shallow bursts. I pulled my phone from my pocket with shaking hands. I hadn't spoken to my father in over 5 years. We sent each other polite birthday texts, holiday emojis, the occasional "hope you're well." I stared at his name on my screen. Dad? I hesitated, then pressed call. It rang twice before he answered. Claire? His voice was older than I remembered, cautious, hopeful. Did you know? I asked, skipping every greeting. Silence. That was answer enough. I was 10, I said, my voice cracking. You let me believe you didn't want me. He exhaled shakily. I thought it was better than you knowing the truth. The truth was already destroying me, I snapped. I know, he whispered. I'm so sorry. I pressed my free hand against my chest, trying to hold myself together. Why didn't you fight harder? He tried, he said. Your mother had resources, lawyers, family backing her. She said if I pushed, she'd take you away completely, move, cut contact. And you believed her? Yes, he said, because she meant it. I closed my eyes. He continued. I was scared, and I convinced myself distance was safer than being erased. I leaned against a lamppost, tears finally spilling over. You erased yourself. I know. We stood in silence, the years between us stretching thin and raw. I have proof now, I said. Documents. Another pause. Your grandmother finally did it. Yes. She's braver than I was. The admission hurt, but it was honest. I don't know what to do with all this. I don't even know who I am anymore. You're someone who survived, he said gently, even when the people who should have protected you failed. I wanted to believe him. A gust of wind cut through my coat. I shivered. Come back, he said suddenly. Let me see you. Let me try, if you'll let me. I hesitated. Everything in my life felt unstable. Family, marriage, memory, trust. But something in his voice, unpolished, unstrategic, felt real. Not tonight, I said, but soon. That's enough, he replied. Thank you. I ended the call and stood there for a long time staring up at the dark sky. Snowflakes had started to fall, quiet and relentless. When I finally turned back toward the house, I knew one thing for certain. I was done protecting other people's comfort at the cost of my own truth. But as I reached the front porch, I heard raised voices inside. My mother. And my husband. My stomach dropped. I hadn't told him yet, and from the sound of it, she had. I stopped just short of the door. The porch light buzzed softly above my head, illuminating the thin layer of snow collecting on the railing. Inside, voices clashed, sharp, urgent, unmistakable. My mother's voice carried that familiar edge of authority, the one she used when she wanted to control the narrative. My husband's voice sounded strained, defensive. I pressed my palm against the cold wood of the door, my pulse roaring in my ears. You had no right, my husband said. I had every right, my mother snapped. She's unstable right now. Someone needs to think clearly. Unstable. I exhaled slowly, grounding myself. 8 years old again, being told I was too emotional to trust my own memories. I opened the door. The room went silent. They were standing near the kitchen island. My husband, Mark, looked like he'd been caught mid-confession, his face flushed, eyes darting to me with something like guilt. My mother stood beside him, arms crossed, chin lifted, already prepared to defend herself. What did you tell him? I asked calmly. My mother spoke first. I told him you're overwhelmed, that Eleanor stirred up old things that were already resolved. I laughed once, sharply. Resolved for who? Mark stepped forward. Claire, she just said there were allegations, that this was all decades ago and handled. I turned to him. And you believed her? He hesitated, just long enough. My chest tightened. You talked about me, without me. I was worried. You left. You weren't answering your phone. So you went to my mother? She came to me, he corrected quickly. She said you might need support. Support. Another weaponized word. I looked at my mother. You went to my husband instead of apologizing to me. She shrugged. Someone has to protect him from the fallout. The implication hit hard. You think I'm the danger, I said. I think you're emotional, she replied evenly, and emotional people make reckless decisions. Mark rubbed his temples. Claire, let's just calm down. That phrase, calm down, lit something fierce inside me. No, I said, you don't get to mediate this, not when you just listen to my mother rewrite my trauma like a bedtime story. His mouth opened, closed. I stepped closer, my voice steady but low. Did she tell you she knew, that she chose silence? He swallowed. She said it wasn't that simple. I turned back to my mother. You're still doing it, still minimizing, still managing. She met my gaze without flinching. Because chaos doesn't heal people, stability does. And lies? I asked. Do those heal people too? Mark interjected. Claire, maybe we should talk privately. I shook my head. No more private conversations about me. The room felt heavy with decades of unspoken agreements. I could almost see the invisible lines, who was allowed to speak, who wasn't. I'd lived inside those lines my whole life. Grandma Eleanor appeared in the doorway then, her face pale but resolute. Margaret, leave. My mother scoffed. This is my house. It was my house first, and tonight it's my rules. Mark looked between us, clearly unsure where to stand, physically and emotionally. I think I should go, he said finally. That hurt more than if he'd chosen a side. Fine, I said, but don't leave confused. Leave informed. I pulled the envelope from my coat pocket and set it on the counter between us. Read, I said. My mother lunged for it. Grandma blocked her. Touch it and you'll answer to me, warned Grandma. Mark hesitated, then opened the envelope. His eyes moved quickly over the pages, his expression shifting, confusion, disbelief, then something like horror. You knew, he said quietly, looking at my mother. You knew all this time. She straightened. I did what I had to do. For who? He asked. She didn't answer. Mark looked at me, eyes glassy. Claire, I'm so sorry. I nodded, numb. Apologies felt thin tonight. I need space from all of this, he nodded. I'll stay at a hotel. My mother exhaled sharply. You're overreacting. That was the last thing she said to me that night. I didn't respond. I just walked past her, past the table where the candles had burned down to stubs, past the memories that suddenly made sense in the worst way. Upstairs in my old bedroom, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the walls. The posters were gone, replaced by guest room neutrality, but I could still see the outline of who I used to be, the girl who learned early that survival meant silence. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. I should have listened to you sooner. I didn't reply. Another buzz. A message from an unknown number. She never meant for you to find out like this. My stomach dropped. I typed back, who is this? 3 dots appeared, disappeared. Then, someone who was there, someone who knows what really happened. My hands trembled. If you want the full truth, the message continued, meet me tomorrow alone. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding, because suddenly I understood something terrifying. My grandmother hadn't told the whole truth, and someone else had been waiting decades to finish the story. The snow had stopped by morning, leaving the world muted and white, a deceptive calm. But inside me, the storm raged. I couldn't stop thinking about the message. Someone who was there, someone who knows what really happened. My stomach twisted every time I imagined who it could be. A relative? A family friend? Or someone I had never suspected, watching quietly while my childhood was stolen. I spent hours pacing my apartment, the envelope from Grandma lying open on the table. Every document, every line, every faded signature replayed in my mind. Each one whispered the same bitter truth. My family had chosen themselves over me, repeatedly for decades. And now someone was saying there was more. I knew I had to go, alone. No one could come with me. Not Mark, not Grandma, not anyone. I had learned the hard way that people always tried to protect themselves first. I dressed quickly, layering a wool coat over my sweater, and stuffed the envelope carefully into my bag. My fingers lingered on the strap as I left my apartment. My phone buzzed again, a second message from the unknown number. Meet me at 3 p.m., the old community center, 27 Eastwood Lane. Come alone, come prepared. Prepared. The word made my chest tighten. Prepared for what? For lies? For revelations? For more betrayal? I arrived at the community center at 2:55 p.m. The building was one of those leftover structures from decades ago. Bricks faded to a dull red, windows streaked with rainwater, a parking lot cracked and empty. The air smelled of cold cement and lingering dust. It was perfect, isolated, secretive. I paused at the door, my hand on the handle. This is it. No going back. Inside, the room was dim. Light filtered through grimy windows, catching dust in the air like tiny suspended stars. A single chair was in the center, and on it, a folded stack of papers. No one else in the room. Not yet. I approached slowly, my heart hammering. Every step echoed like a drumbeat in the quiet space. I reached the chair and picked up the papers. Then I felt a presence. A shadow shifted near the doorway. My breath hitched. Who's there? A man stepped forward. His face was partially hidden by the hood of his coat, but there was something familiar in the way he carried himself, the tilt of his shoulders. "You're Claire Whitmore?" "Yes," I said, my voice small, shaky. He nodded slowly. "I've been waiting a long time for you to find out the truth." My stomach knotted. "Who are you?" He pulled back his hood, and the sight of his face froze me to the spot. It was someone I hadn't seen in years, someone I thought I had forgiven, or at least forgotten, someone whose presence in my life had always been tied to whispers, fear, and a heavy silence that I had carried into adulthood. It was David Marlowe, my mother's cousin, the one who had been around every Christmas, every family gathering, who had always been just a friendly uncle in my memory. Until now. He smiled faintly, but there was no warmth in it. "You're ready," he said, "but are you ready to hear everything?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "Everything?" He nodded again. "Your grandmother told you part of it, the part she could live with, but I know the rest." My hands shook as I gripped the envelope tighter. Every memory of being left alone, ignored, silenced, suddenly made sense, yet the weight of what I was about to hear made the room spin. David sat across from me, placing a small box on the floor. "These are the last pieces of the puzzle, and Claire, some truths are worse than lies." I swallowed hard. Why now? He looked at me with eyes that had witnessed decades of family secrets. "Because the people who should have protected you are gone or afraid, and someone has to tell you before it's too late." I nodded, my pulse racing. I had no idea what would come next, but for the first time in my life, I felt alive in my own story. David opened the box. Inside were photographs, letters, and what looked like a small sealed envelope with my name on it. This one not from my grandmother, but from him. "This is everything," he said. "What your mother, your father, everyone tried to bury. And now you get to decide what to do with it." I felt a shiver run down my spine. "And if I'm not ready?" "You are," he said firmly. "You've been ready your whole life." I took a deep breath, steadying my shaking hands, and then I opened the envelope. What I saw made my knees buckle and my stomach drop. It wasn't just lies, neglect, or betrayal. It was proof, concrete, undeniable proof that my childhood had been manipulated in ways I couldn't have imagined. And worse, it implicated not only my mother, but people I had trusted blindly. I looked up at David, my voice barely a whisper. Why would they do this to me?" He shook his head. "Because some people value image over truth. Some people will protect themselves even if it destroys the ones they claim to love, and some just want to control the story forever." My chest tightened, my vision blurred with tears I didn't have the luxury to release. I realized in that moment that my entire perception of family, safety, love had been built on a fragile illusion. And the worst part? The truth wasn't finished. David leaned closer, his voice low. "There's one more person you need to know about, someone closer than you think, someone who helped cover it up." My heart froze. "Who?" He hesitated, then whispered a name that made my blood run cold. "Your father."
I staggered back, my hand clutching the papers like a lifeline. The revelation hit harder than anything else that night. My father, who I had just begun to reach out to, who I had thought was a distant ally in this story of betrayal, was part of the puzzle all along. And now I understood the truth I'd been shielded from. Some betrayals don't just live in your childhood, they live in your entire life, waiting for the moment you confront them. The room went silent except for my ragged breathing. Outside, the muted winter light of the community center casts long shadows across the floor, and I realized something terrifying. I was only halfway to the truth.
The name echoed in my mind. My father. I sank into the cold metal chair across from David, my hands clutching the papers so tightly they hurt. My chest was heavy, each breath like a battle. For years I had wanted answers, and now I had them, only they were worse than I had imagined. David studied me quietly. You need to hear the full story, Claire. Everything your grandmother couldn't tell you, everything your mother tried to hide, and yes, everything your father was involved in. I felt like my body had gone numb. I trusted him, I whispered. I tried to forgive him, and I choked back a sob. He knew. David nodded slowly. He didn't just know, he helped cover it up. He made sure the investigation didn't go far. He was afraid. Afraid of losing you, afraid of your mother, afraid of what would happen to the family's reputation. I could feel tears pooling, but my hands refused to shake anymore. My anger was solidifying, sharp and focused. Why? I asked. Why would he do that? I was a child. David's eyes were steady. Because your mother threatened him. She told him if he pushed, she'd take you completely away. She would ruin his career, his life, and he chose to protect himself and the family over you. I let out a hollow laugh, the sound bouncing off the walls. My whole childhood, my entire sense of safety, built on lies, and all the people who should have loved me chose themselves instead? David leaned forward. It's worse than you think. There's a letter your father wrote after the incident. He left it with me years ago. He couldn't send it. He couldn't admit the truth. But he wrote it for you. He handed me a folded sheet of paper. I opened it with trembling hands. The words were raw, full of guilt and shame, but also of love. A love that had been twisted by fear and manipulation, silenced before it could be spoken. Claire, I failed you. I tried to protect the family and, in doing so, failed the one person who mattered most, you. I am sorry beyond words. I hope one day you can understand why I stayed silent. I love you, always. I gripped the letter, tears finally spilling over. It was everything I had wanted and feared at the same time, love and betrayal, stitched together so tightly that I couldn't separate them. David placed a hand on my shoulder. You're not alone anymore, Claire. Not with the truth. But be careful. Your family may not like it when this comes out. I nodded, my body trembling. I don't care anymore. I can't keep living in the shadows of their lies. I need to tell them everything. All of it. Then you must prepare, because when the truth hits, it will hit hard. Your mother will try to control the narrative, your father will try to protect himself, and others, well, they'll have their own secrets to guard. But you will finally be free. I stood, my hand still clutching the papers and letters. Free, I whispered. The word felt strange on my tongue, like I was tasting air for the first time. David nodded. Free, but not unscarred. You will feel the weight of what they did, and you will need to decide who stays in your life after this. But the truth cannot be ignored. I felt a cold clarity settle in me. For the first time, I understood something essential. Empowerment wasn't about revenge. It was about knowing, claiming your story, and no longer allowing others to rewrite it. I took a deep breath. I need to face them, tonight, everyone. David's lips tightened in a small smile. I expected nothing less.
As I walked out of the dim community center and into the quiet winter afternoon, I realized that Christmas would never be the same again. The family I had known, the one I had tried so hard to forgive and protect, was gone. In its place was truth, jagged and painful, but real. And somewhere, deep inside, I felt a spark of something I hadn't felt in decades: hope. But as I rounded the corner toward my parents' street, my phone buzzed again. A new message. No number, no name. They're waiting, and they'll lie. Be ready. My heart hammered in my chest, because I knew with terrifying certainty that the next confrontation would not only challenge my understanding of my family, but also determine if I could finally step out of the shadows of their betrayal or be swallowed by them forever. The house looked deceptively normal from the outside. Christmas lights twinkled in the windows, the faint smell of baked goods drifting from the kitchen. Everything was calm, cheerful, ordinary. But I knew better. I had been carrying the truth in my bag, the papers, the letters, the envelope from David, and with every step toward the front door, the weight of it pressed harder on my shoulders. I wasn't just returning home. I was walking into the epicenter of decades of lies, manipulation, and betrayal. I paused at the threshold, taking a deep breath. I had rehearsed my words 1,000 times in my head, but they always sounded weak compared to what I actually felt: anger, grief, disbelief, and, strangely, determination. I opened the door. My mother, Margaret Whitmore, was in the living room arranging ornaments on the tree. The fake cheer on her face faltered the second she saw me. "Claire," she said, voice measured like she was practicing civility, "you're back early." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She already knew. She had read the signs, the determined set of my jaw, the envelope clutched in my hand, the cold fire in my eyes. My father stepped out from the kitchen, his expression cautious, almost guilty. He glanced at me and then at the papers. "Claire," he began. I held up a hand. "Save it." Grandma Eleanor, sitting quietly in her chair near the fireplace, watched me with that same calm authority she had wielded the night she first revealed part of the truth. "Let her speak," she said softly. I swallowed hard and began. "I know everything." My voice shook, but I forced it out. "Everything that happened when I was a child. Everything you tried to hide. Everything that was your choice to protect, not me, but yourselves." The room went silent. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My father's eyes widened slightly, as if he hadn't expected me to confront them so directly. "I have proof," I continued, setting the envelope on the coffee table. "Documents, letters, all of it. I know who covered for whom. I know who stayed silent when they should have spoken. I know how deeply you betrayed me." My mother laughed, a cold, incredulous sound. "Claire, you're overreacting. You were a child. People make mistakes." "No," I said, my voice rising. "Mistakes leave scars. Lies leave scars. And what you did wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. And I want you to feel the weight of it, not just dismiss it." Grandma Eleanor's eyes flicked to my mother. "Margaret," she said, quietly but firmly, "this is long overdue." My mother's composure cracked for a split second, and I saw it. The same arrogance that had shielded her for decades faltering. She tried to regain control. "Claire, you're letting your anger cloud your judgment. We've always loved you. You're reading too much into things." I laughed bitterly, tears threatening to spill. "Loved me? Loved me? I spent years thinking I was fragile, imagining things, trying to please a family that only protected its image, and you call that love?" My father stepped forward, placing a tentative hand on my shoulder. "Claire, I flinched. Don't. You failed me. You all failed me. And I'm not here to rebuild your self-image. I'm here to claim mine." I opened the envelope and began to lay out the documents, the incident reports, letters, and photographs. Each one landed like a hammer on the table, undeniable proof of the betrayal that had defined my childhood. My mother's face went pale, my father's lips pressed into a tight line. Grandma Eleanor simply nodded, silently validating every word. "You see," I said, my voice trembling but strong. "I didn't imagine it. You all knew. You all protected the wrong people, and now I finally get to choose what I do with this truth." My mother's voice was small, almost a whisper. "Claire, you don't understand. I was protecting the family. I thought I was doing what was best." "No," I said, rage and sadness mixing into a bitter cocktail. "No, you were protecting yourselves. That's the difference. And I'm done pretending it's love." Grandma Eleanor finally spoke. "Claire, you have every right to walk away from this, to set boundaries, to decide who stays in your life. They may try to manipulate you, charm you, or guilt you, but the choice is yours." My father's voice cracked. "I never wanted you to hate me." I met his gaze. "I don't hate you yet, but I won't let this go without acknowledgement, without boundaries, without change." And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control. Not over them, not over the past, but over myself. Because for the first time, I was not the scared little girl hiding in the corners of my family's secrets. I was Claire Whitmore, 32, armed with truth, and finally ready to set limits. I gathered the documents and placed them in my bag. I need space, and I will be deciding who deserves to be in my life moving forward, starting tonight. My mother opened her mouth to argue. My father looked like he might try to stop me, but Grandma Eleanor simply gave me a small, proud nod. That was all I needed. I turned and walked to the door. As I stepped into the cold night air, I realized something profound. The betrayal would always be a part of me, but it would no longer define me. And for the first time, I felt the possibility of healing. The night air was crisp, sharp enough to wake every nerve in my body. I walked away from the house slowly, each step echoing on the empty street. I could still hear my mother muttering behind me, trying to reclaim control in a conversation I had already ended. But I didn't look back. Not this time. I found myself at the park nearby, the one I used to visit as a child when the house felt suffocating. The swing swayed gently in the wind, empty. The moon reflected off the frozen pond, casting silver light across the snow. I sat on a bench, bag beside me, my hands finally unclenching from the envelope that had carried the weight of decades. Tears streamed down my face, not just for the betrayal, not just for the lies, but for the years I had blamed myself, for believing I was fragile, for believing I was the problem when all along the adults had been the ones failing. I allowed myself to grieve. But grief shifted slowly into clarity. I realized that forgiveness, if it came at all, wouldn't be for them. It would be for me. I didn't need to erase the betrayal. I didn't need to pretend it didn't happen. I only needed to reclaim my own story. I pulled out my phone and typed a note to myself. "Claire, you survived. You remember. You set boundaries. You choose who deserves your love and trust." I thought about my grandmother, Eleanor. Her courage had sparked this reckoning. She had admitted her failings, given me the evidence, and stepped aside. She had shown me that love sometimes means telling the truth, even when it hurts. I thought about my father. I didn't know yet if I could fully reconcile with him, but I knew I would demand honesty and boundaries. No more silence, no more hiding. And my mother, I knew some doors might never fully open. Some people may never admit the depth of their mistakes, and that was okay, because I no longer needed validation from those who had chosen their comfort over my life. I stayed at the park for hours, letting the quiet settle over me. Slowly, the anger ebbed. Slowly, the fear loosened. And slowly, I felt the faintest flicker of peace.
I understood something then. Survival was just the beginning. Healing required courage. Healing required boundaries. Healing required the truth. And I had it. By the time I returned home, the house was silent. My husband's hotel key still sat on the counter. Grandma Eleanor had gone to bed, leaving me with my own thoughts and the sense of agency I had not felt since childhood. I looked at the Christmas tree, the lights now dull in the absence of the night's chaos. It felt strangely symbolic. For years, the lights had blinded me to the cracks, to the hidden fractures beneath the surface. Now, stripped of illusions, I could finally see clearly. I smiled softly. Not a happy smile, not naive, but a smile of someone who had survived, claimed her story, and refused to be silent anymore. I picked up my phone one last time that night and typed a question I knew I would leave open for reflection. Have you ever experienced betrayal like this? Share your story in the comments. Because for the first time, I understood something profound. Truth, however painful, is liberation, and the courage to face it is the first step toward healing. The past could not be changed, but my future was finally mine.